more Songs of a True White Brother. I'm going to continue now with part 4, etc., of the structure of the world. Now, one of the things I talked about in just giving a picture of sort of the universal characteristics of the human being that's shared all over the world as people live out their individual biographies. I want to point to what I talked about earlier, which used the terms our feelings of antipathy and sympathy, our likes and dislikes, and the world of conceptions, which are sort of the first layers that we can come to when we look objectively at our own inner life, and that we also share these characteristics with everybody else in the world. In general, I mean, there are some variations, psychopaths and sociopaths and people who have disturbances of various kinds. In any event, because these dialogues involve presenting a conception of the world which accepts that there's spirit and not just matter, but spirit and matter, and also because we're intentionally adding into our world conception various qualities that we can observe and not just base our world conception on quantities. I want to add back in a couple of words that were taken out. I mentioned in a previous talk that when Freud's works were translated into English, his use of the terminology soul and spirit, or geistes and seele, was eliminated, and the word mind was substituted for it. I would like to bring back those two words, spirit and soul, but I'd like to do it in a way in which we look at phenomenon and then apply those labels, those names, to the phenomenon with which we're familiar, so that we aren't sort of making up some kind of imaginary soul and spirit thing, but we're actually looking at perceptible reality that everybody can relate to. So, for example, for the word spirit, I want us to also recognize that's got to do with the word that we use when we refer to the innermost core of our own being, and we say I want this, I'm going to do that, I have to face this. Whenever in our thinking we use the word I want us to also think of that as a word that can be identified with the idea of spirit, and that from our own examinations of what I is, we will come to a deeper understanding of spirit in the human being. A lady who I referred to a couple of messages ago, Catherine McCune, in her book On Becoming an Alchemist, calls this individuality aspect of our nature the sort of core of it that stamps us with our uniqueness, which the heroes material had pointed out, how each individual is unique. She uses the word style to describe that. We impress on our own personality and on our biographies this style which is unique to us, and I think that's a good word to sort of keep in mind. So we have this reference to I, we can also think of our I as a spirit, and we can also think that this spirit expresses itself as a kind of style, a way of being that's unique. And of course we can see that, with young people today, just the way they dress. This was less so in prior times, a tendency for everybody to sort of dress alike, and when I was growing up in the 50s, we called this conforming and being mature. Today it's far more acceptable for people to dress somewhat outrageously or with a definite particular style. Obviously we have to buy the same kinds of clothes and stuff, but I'm just pointing in that direction. Now the word soul is different from spirit and refers to a different aspect of our experience. Let's make a distinction, which is subtle in a way, but I think everybody can do it, a distinction between the experiencer and the content of experience. So that you're sitting watching a video and listening to my noises that I make with my mouth, and that's the content of your experience in that moment. But the experiencer, yourself, your I, your spirit, the creator of your style, is not the same thing as the experience. Now, in a lot of instances, we do have a tendency to identify ourselves with our experience, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but there are subtleties, and we'll try to get into them a little bit in this message, in this song. Anyway, so we have the content of our experience, and we also have elements of our experience that seem to come from unconscious or subconscious places, which of course was somewhat what Freud discovered, and which a lot of research has been done on, and people are still working with that. But let's include those things which seem to come into our life as feelings of liking and dislike, sort of the obvious kinds of feelings we can have. And of course there's all kinds of other feelings we have. And we identify with those. We think, well, I am my feelings, and that's a natural sort of existential point of view to take, although if we reflect subtly on what that is, when we say, well, I feel angry, for example, we've inserted this word in between anger and the I. We've said, I feel angry. And when we do that feel part, we're actually entering into the soul, into the consciousness of the soul. So we could say spirit soul-fies, or soul manifests anger. Think about it. You have to make your own decisions here. I'm just kind of trying to point a finger and say, well, look at that. And of course, in the soul we have unconscious and subconscious elements as well. And in Jungian psychology, there's been an effort to sort of try to appreciate those subconscious elements in terms of archetypes and other ideas, and all of this can be very useful to us. There's a lot of work in various elements of psychology that can be paid attention to, and depending on who you are and what your life experience has been, you'll have some ideas along these lines. So anyway, I wanted to introduce the word soul and spirit, and let's add another nuance to the content of the soul, which is, let's call it sense experience, because a feeling is not something that you see unless I go "Aah!" and manifest on my face or in my gestures some aspect of my feeling life. But we all see, hear, have all these experiences, the senses, which Steiner, for example, says there are 12, not just 5. There's something to get into and chew on. But in any event, the content of the soul is also sense experience. But I'm out of time, and that needs a little bit of elaboration, so we'll go to that next.